What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. And then this video is actually going to be my first video podcast. If you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. It helps motivate me to keep making these. Today's video, we're going to talk about spare tires on your vehicle. And whether that's a car, a truck, or a trailer, the most overlooked maintenance item is the spare tire. I am now 16, 17 years professional mechanic. I worked for BMW. I currently work for Audi. And checking tires, and especially spares, are part of our maintenance intervals. I constantly see these tires being overlooked. Now, there's a couple different variations of spare tires. Some cars don't even have spare tires. Some BMWs, when I worked there, had run flat tires, and therefore they did not have a spare, which kind of sucks because even with a run flat tire, if you drive on it flat, for extended period of time, the sidewall can come apart and then you're still stranded. I always prefer to have a spare tire. The next kind of spare tires that you have, if you don't have one, is what's called a space saver. It's basically the same diameter of your regular wheel, but it's very skinny. It's made to fit in your trunk and save space, hence the name space saver. The next kind of style is what's called an inflatable space saver. I didn't know about these until I started working for Audi. Audi uses this a lot. It's basically a rim with a flattened tire that's designed to expand when you inflate it. It looks really weird. It looks like a completely squared off flat tire. And the car comes with an air compressor. You hook up the air compressor and the tire expands as it fills with air. And then the third type, or fourth type, or fifth type, there's a lot of different types, is a full-size spare. A lot of times you'll see this on pickup trucks. Usually on pickup trucks, it's underneath the bed. Some vans have it, and even some cars have it. At BMW, the 7 Series came with a full-size spare, and it was actually a rim that matched what was on the car. Those are great because it's basically taking off the wheel that you have that's flat and putting on an exact replacement, and you can continue on your journey without having to go to a tire shop. Spare tires are designed, especially space savers, to get you off the side of the road and to a tire facility. That tire facility would replace your damaged tire, put your spare back where it goes, and you're on your way. Constantly, you see people driving around on a donut, if you will, which is a spare tire, a space saver, and they drive along on that far longer than they should. A lot of these tires will have a rating on it, maximum speed of 50 miles per hour, maximum distance 50 miles. Each tire is going to vary dependent on the manufacturer. The vehicle manufacturer, separately of the tire manufacturer, might list how long you should drive on a tire. But you really do see people drive on spare tires way too long. So one of the things that you should do, even if you get your car serviced every 3 months if you have conventional oil, a lot of times all the newer manufacturers are up to a year. I know my GMC pickup truck is roughly every 6 months it's due for an oil change, but the Audis and BMWs are anywhere from 10 to 15,000 mile service intervals. Usually it's 1 year or that mileage, whichever comes first. Most customers, if you will, don't check their spare tires. And one thing you gotta watch out for, and I see this constantly, is we'll get cars that come in from a quick lube place that gets their oil changes there. They come in for some other reason at the dealership, and we check the spare anyways, and the tires are way underinflated. So even if you're getting your oil changed somewhere, you should still double check it, because not all the times do those technicians or mechanics check your spare. So leave it up to yourself to double check and make sure your spare is correctly filled. Most space savers, aka donut tires, usually are around 60 psi of pressure. A lot of times this is located, the spec for that is located in your driver's door jamb. It will say the pressures of your front tires, your rear tires, and your spare. Sometimes there'll be 2 pressures located in that door jamb. One will be for everyday driving and one is for max carrying capacity. I know with my truck, especially my older trucks, there was a everyday single driver air pressure, and then there was a max cargo with 4 passengers, and it was a higher pressure rating. Sometimes even with trailering a vehicle, an actual trailer or some sort of load, there might be even a higher pressure. So consult your owner's manual for those. But typically in the door jamb, there'll be a tire pressure plaque or sticker that will tell you what your tire pressure should be, including the spare. When in doubt, read the tire. On the side of the tire, it will say maximum inflatable pressure. It might be 60 psi, it might be 70 psi. That means you can't go over that, or you could have a tire failure, especially when inflating it if you just put the new tire on. So if it was like a tire shop. But rule of thumb, if it's a donut, it's usually around 60 pounds per square inch. Full size tires, so if you have that 7 series, if you have a pickup truck, theoretically it should be set to wherever your highest rated axle pressure is. So let's say on my truck, the front pressures are 36 pounds, the rears are 38. That full size spare should be set to 38. Now, personally, and this is up to you, I always add a few extra pounds of air because air leaks out over time. Even if you don't have a puncture in your tire, air just naturally makes its way through the rubber, the valve stem, the beads. You lose air over time. So I always add a few extra pounds to kind of make up for that loss. So that way I can get to my next oil change and I can recheck the tire pressures. One of the things you want to check when you're checking your tire pressures is the condition of the tire. So that will be mainly the rubber. Is it dry rotted or cracking on the outside edges? Is the tread looking still good? You know, those kind of common things. If you think it looks bad, it might be bad. Now, when talking about the inflatable spare, like the space savers that are like in the Audis, the one I just showed you, those tires only work if you have the air compressor. So the next little section I want to talk about is your spare tire tools. You might have a spare tire, but if your car doesn't have the jack or tire iron, you can't get the tire off the vehicle. Now, if you don't ever plan to change your tire yourself and you're going to call AAA or some sort of auto club, maybe you have a husband, a boyfriend, or whatever, somebody that's going to come change the tire for you, and you just need to make sure the tire's there with air, that's okay. But you should always try to keep tools in the vehicle. The car should have came with a jack and tire iron to be able to change your tire. So make sure those are there. One of the key things that is most overlooked is wheel locks. A lot of cars will come with wheel locks from the factory and or you added them aftermarket. Make sure those wheel lock keys are in the trunk and ready to be grabbed. And that only will help you, but it also helps the mechanic shop when cars come to me for work and I need to change out their brakes or tires and I have to go try to find a lug nut key. It becomes a pain. Luckily, at the dealer, we have a master set for the dealer keys, but if it's aftermarket, we could be out of luck. So you don't want to find yourself stranded on the side of the road, unable to get your wheel off. So make sure you have that lug nut key if you have one. So going back to that whole compressor thing, the Audis come with a little square box. It's a compressor. You hook it up, you inflate the tire, it expands, you set it to the pressure of 60 psi, and you're good to go. Make sure that compressor works. I haven't ran into an Audi one that has not worked out of the box, but in case you have an aftermarket air pump or any air pump in general, it's possible it could fail over time, especially if it's older. So I would recommend running the air pump and make sure that it's actually building pressure to inflate a tire. Just because you plug it into the cigarette lighter and it starts making noise doesn't mean it's actually capable of inflating your tire. So it's a good practice to actually pull the spare out, hook up the air compressor, and try to air it up. As long as that works, you can put it back together and you know you'll be safe and sound on the side of the road. Let's talk about full-size spares. So with full-size spares, like I mentioned with the 7 Series, pickup trucks, vans, Jeeps. You see Jeep Wranglers go down the road and they have that big tire on the back tailgate. A lot of times, that full-size spare may match what came on the vehicle factory. So it's almost like you have 5 full tires. A lot of times we see when somebody gets a flat, they'll pull that spare and they're like, hey, it's a brand new tire. And then I don't have to buy one. They'll put that tire that's flat or damaged where the spare was and they'll go on their way. A lot of times they forget about that. They'll end up getting another flat and it turns out their spare tire is already damaged and they can't use it. We see this a lot with people that are trying to save money. Instead of replacing all 4 tires, they might try to use that one spare as a good new tire and only buy 3 new tires. That's okay if your tire that you're replacing can be moved to the spare and it will make a good spare. You definitely don't want to move a spare tire that is bald or has tread damage, because if the tire's bald and you put it on as a spare emergency, that could cause issues driving in the rain or in the winter. So you should have a good, safe spare. Trailer tires are no different. So trailers come with a spare tire. You need to check its condition, and specifically with a trailer, you need to check that tire pressure before every trip. Let's say you're driving down the road with your trailer. Your tire blows, you have the spare. The spare has air in it, but maybe it's underinflated. I've seen this way too many times. If you put an underinflated tire on a trailer, that trailer tire, because it's underinflated, gets a lot of heat into it. The heat will destroy a tire and can cause damage. A lot of times when that trailer tire overheats, you get what's called a blowout, and then you're stuck with no spare and you're still down a tire. So make sure before you go onto a trip, especially if you have a trailer, that that spare tire is filled along with your other tires. We're going to do a quick recap. So let's make sure that you actually have a spare tire if available, and make sure that if your car came with run flats, let's say a BMW 3 Series, and you don't have a spare from factory because it's designed to drive on the run flats to the nearest dealer or tire shop to get replaced, make sure that the tires have been replaced with non-run flats. I saw this a lot of times when I worked at BMW. Customers that had a 3 Series with factory run flat tires that doesn't come with a spare would replace all 4 tires with non-run flats. The main reason because they would do that was cost. Run flat tires are way more expensive, and comfort. Run flat tires, since they're designed to drive on flat, have very stiff sidewalls. The sidewalls, which is when you're looking at the side of the wheel, that rubber that you see is the sidewall. Those are very stiff because they have to support the weight of the vehicle if they're flat. Well, that causes a harsh ride. If you put non-run flats on, the ride's nice and smooth and the tires are cheaper. So a lot of people would change out to non-run flats even if we advised against it. If you do that, the problem you run into is that your car didn't come with a spare. Now you don't have run flats. If you get a flat, you are stranded. You cannot change out to a spare. You will need to get a tow truck. So keep that in mind. You should double check if your car doesn't have a spare that you have run flats available. While we're recapping, go over tools. Make sure you have your jack, a tire iron, any kind of tools that you need if your vehicle has hubcaps or what's called lug caps. Audis have lug caps and center caps that cover up the lugs to keep them cleaner and make the wheel look nicer. Make sure you have a tool to be able to get those off. The Audis come with a tool from factory, but it could be missing from your kit if somebody didn't put it back. So double check that you have those kind of small tools. An air compressor is not a bad thing to have outside of the one that's factory. If you have one of those inflatable spares, you could buy a cheap little one on Amazon. Maybe I'll provide a link to one that you can toss in the corner of your trunk or even under the floor if you have the space where your spare is. That way you can inflate your tire in an emergency. If you happen to forget to check it and you put the spare on and it's flat, you can add air to it or add air to your regular car tires. Condition of the tires. One thing that you might overlook is you might look at the tire and say, hey, I can see tread, it looks okay, I don't see any cracking, doesn't look dry rotted. But one thing that's overlooked is the inside tires. I would recommend going out in your driveway and turning your wheel all the way to the lock. The lock would be as far as the wheel can turn to one direction. That way you can look at the inside tire. A lot of times the tires will wear out on the inside. It's either from extreme camber wear or toe wear. That might be foreign terms to you, but it's just the way the alignment works. We won't get into details about alignment in this video. Once you check that inside tire, let's say you do the driver's side first, you can go walk around to the other side of the vehicle and check from the back side the other tire or rotate your wheel to the other direction. You want to make sure that you have tread that goes all the way across your wheel or your tire uniformly. You don't want to see it worn out on the inside or outside edge of the tires. If you do see tires that have a lot of tread in the center and they're kind of bald or look weird on the inside or outside, you have an alignment issue. I would recommend replacing those tires and getting alignment performed. Every time you replace your tires, you should also get alignment performed. You might think it's just some upsell from the shop to get more money from you, but tires are not cheap. And an alignment that is off, especially toe, which toe is the way your steering wheel will face basically going down the road. It's how your tires point. If that adjustment is off, it will destroy a tire very quickly. So alignment it could be expensive depending on where you go and what kind of vehicle you have, but it's cheap insurance to help protect those tires. They're a costly investment, so we want to try to make sure they last as long as possible. So alignment with new tires, I always recommend doing alignment if you do 2 tires or more, and you should always try to replace tires in a pair per axle. You don't want one brand new tire on your front right and a worn out tire on your front left. It's not good for the drivetrain. All right, guys, we're going to kind of wrap up this podcast here. The main part is check your tire, make sure you have your tools, your tires are correctly inflated, and that they are in good condition. If you think this video was semi-helpful or helpful at all, please leave a comment. If I missed anything, please drop a comment as well. I'm going to try to make a series of podcasts that are kind of vehicle related, maybe maintenance related, to help people out that might not know this information. I think my next podcast video will be like a maintenance pre-check for a trip. Let's say you're going on vacation, and what should you actually check before you go? Some people will bring their car into a shop and ask for a pre-trip inspection, but a lot of it you can do yourself. So that will probably be my next video. If you're interested in seeing that, please consider hitting the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you're alerted when that video comes out. If you want to see other videos, maybe maintenance, how to change your oil, a cabin filter, an air filter, things of that nature, drop a comment. All my videos are viewer suggested, so please suggest a video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until the next video, drive safe.